I need to share my webcam. Okay. All right. I see Mayor. Teacher. Okay, okay. I'm going to turn my camera over to Greg, okay? Just sit right inside me and I'm going to get, okay, I'm going to get his work. I'm going to get his iPad started. All right, thanks for
Cecile was my
Well, y'all look pretty natural.
Don't talk about it, we can hear you.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Oh, can he hear you?
We have a little sound problem.
We can hear you. Not great, but we can hear you. And see you.
Hello?
Hello. Can you hear us?
Here, wait, I'm going to have to, let me call Floyd right back. I need to turn it over. Don't have to. I had it, or Greg got it totally locked up. I can't get it. We can't hear anything. Are you hearing us?
Yes, we hear you.
Are you? Okay. We can't hear you. Sure. Put this on speakerphone.
I don't know. You should be able to hear.
testing. Testing. Can you hear that, Cecile, through the iPad?
Can you stream Mary Levitt?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we can see her.
Okay, all right, good deal. I think what's going to happen is that's going to be the only one that we're going to be able to use, is what it looks like.
Okay.
Because the rest of it, Greg's won't come live for me. I can't get it to log into the go-to-meeting thing. It gets to a certain thing and won't go on.
Okay. Can you hear us now for the sound?
So, no.
Okay.
All I can have is my telephone.
We might can use the telephone. And also
Okay.
Now we're going to do it.
Now try the sound with the iPad one more time.
Testing 1, 2.
Hello? There it is.
Hello.
Okay, we got it. And we can hear us? Yeah. I think we can.
All right, we're good.
All right, can you folks hear us over there?
It's not working.
Is that what's wrong?
Yes, it should be.
I'll leave it on. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, very good. I'm realizing there is just a few seconds lag between here and there.
I can hear you a little bit.
Okay, how about now?
Yes, yeah, Ed, y'all need to hold your microphones up just as closely as you can.
All right, how about now?
Okay, yeah, that's better.
Very
Okay.
good.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can. And,
right.
and who is the lady we are looking at the moment?
That's Councillor Monica Lovett. I'm the Mayor of Abingdon-on-Thames.
Well, we are very
Good
pleased.
morning to you.
And good morning to you. I guess it's good afternoon to you. What is it, about 3 o'clock over there?
That's right, yes.
Well, very.
1 minute.
Well, all right. I'm sorry, what did you ask us?
I said 3 o'clock and 1 minute.
Okay.
1 minute past 3.
Okay, well, it's about 10 o'clock over here. That being said, it looks as if we're ready to go. And I see,
Yes, we're ready to go here.
all righty, I see Councilman Humphreys back there now. And,
Yes, Mr. Morgan, Mayor Morgan, I'm here. I forgot a pair of socks. Could you mail those to me?
sure thing, we'll drop them in the mail today. And you know how fast the mail goes. All righty. Well, very good, sir. It looks as if we have all of our connections, and that being said, I'm going to call our meeting to order. And on behalf of the Abingdon, Virginia Town Council, I wish to, first of all, welcome everyone who is here today for what is a very historic moment, certainly in the history of our two towns, but also perhaps in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're not aware of another time when something like this has been attempted, and it looks as if we are off on a reasonable track here. I had worried, quite frankly, about whether everything would come together, but it looks like we're going to be successful, at least with the technological ends of it. And I offer my thanks and appreciation to everyone on our staff and on the other side of the Atlantic who have made this come together. That being said, I will ask the clerk of the town of Abingdon, Virginia, Miss Cecile Rosenbaum, who is currently in Abingdon, Virginia, or Abingdon, United Kingdom, if she will call the roll, please.
Hello, can you see me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Are you ready for me to call the roll?
We are ready for you to call the roll.
All right. Mr. Howard.
Here.
Mr. Berry.
Here.
Mrs. Lowe.
Here.
Mayor Morgan.
Here.
Okay, we have 4 members present in Abingdon, Virginia, and I'd like the record to reflect that we also have 1 member present in Abingdon, England, Mr. Humphreys.
Here.
All right, Mr. Mayor, it appears that all 5 members are present, one via the internet.
And I guess it doesn't matter where you are, there you are. And I must confess that several of us wish that we were with you folks in Abingdon, United Kingdom today, but I'm so pleased that this could come together. It is customary in the scheme of our particular meetings to have a pledge of allegiance to the flag. And Mr. Jason Berry, our council member, will lead us in that today.
Please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have at this point in time a recognition of special visitation of town staff, council, and distinguished guests from Abingdon-on-Thames via Wi-Fi. And I would ask our town manager, Mr. Greg Kelly, if he would make the appropriate introductions of the folks that are on your side of the Atlantic.
Mayor Morgan, can you do me a favor?
Yes.
I need you to lower your papers. We can't see your face.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to manage it on the iPad. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, again, it is an honor to appear across the pond, so to speak, and I hope you all are having a great morning there. I'm going to allow Mayor Lovett to make the necessary introductions for the record of the folks on behalf of Abingdon-on-Thames who are present here today. And so with that said, I'm going to slide the monitor back over her way and allow her to introduce these folks, and hopefully we'll try to get each of their pictures on the screen.
Very good.
my right, I have Councillor Sandy Lovett, who is leader of the Town Council, and also he is my escort for the year. To my left, I have our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Andrew Todd. And I have Councillor Alice Babcock, who has been chairman of our Queen's Jubilee Working Party. And next to her is our Town Clerk, Mr. Nigel Warner.
Hi there.
Very good. All righty, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might also add that in terms of his statement that we have the town attorney, Deb Eisenhower, of course.
Very
So
good.
that you will recognize.
Yes.
And of course, the town clerk who just called the roll, and our marketing and social media coordinator, Tennille Montgomery.
Hello,
And
hello.
we're all very proud to be a part of the meeting this morning and this afternoon.
Now, I would also ask, are you folks located in the Abingdon on Thames council chambers at the present time?
And then we're in the mayor's parlour.
Okay. Well, that's what I need, is a parlor. It is. Well, perhaps we'll start referring to ours as the parlor as well. But thank you. It's a great-looking parlor you have there. Mr. Kelly, I believe in your travels you brought along a resolution from the Virginia General Assembly, and would you care to address that at the present time?
We do have that in our presence, Mr. Mayor, and would you like to read the resolution and then I'll make the presentation, or would you prefer that I have either myself, Mr. Humphreys, or the clerk read the resolution?
I think we would like to have it read on your side of the Atlantic, please.
Okay. Commonwealth of Virginia General Assembly House Joint Resolution number 511, commending Abingdon-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, United Kingdom. Agreed by the House of Delegates March 7, 2012, agreed to by the Senate March 9, 2012. Whereas Abingdon-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, United Kingdom will host the mayor, town council members, staff members, and town residents of Abingdon, Virginia, June 2nd through 5th, 2012, during the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. And whereas Abingdon-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, United Kingdom, and Abingdon, Virginia began a civic exchange in 1962 when Abingdon-on-Thames Mayor Constance Cox traveled to Abingdon. And whereas Abingdon shares a close connection to Abingdon-on-Thames as the Virginia town traces its name to Willoughby Bertie, the 4th Earl of Abingdon, and whereas the civic exchange remained informally for several decades until Abingdon Mayor Lois Humphreys traveled to Abingdon-on-Thames in 2006 on the occasion of the town's 450th anniversary and received a certificate of reaffirmation of friendship. And whereas when Abingdon residents traveled to Abingdon-on-Thames in June 2012, they will participate in the town's civic celebrations marking the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. And whereas Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Britain's second longest serving monarch, assumed the throne in 1952 upon the death of her father, King George VI. And whereas Abingdon visitors will join Abingdon-on-Thames residents at such events as a Jubilee Ball, civic church service, and traditional bone-throwing event, and view the Queen's Jubilee flotilla on the Thames. And whereas Abingdon visitors to Abingdon-on-the-Thames look forward to renewing and making new friendship while joining in the celebratory festivities marking the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Delegates, the Senate concurring, that the General Assembly hereby commend Abingdon-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, United Kingdom, as it welcomes the Mayor, Town Council members, staff members, and Abingdon Town residents of Abingdon, Virginia, June 2nd through 5th, 2012, during the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. And be it resolved further that the clerk of the House of Delegates prepare copies of this resolution for presentation to the Mayor of Abingdon-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, United Kingdom, and the Mayor of Abingdon, Virginia, as an expression of the General Assembly's appreciation for Abingdon-on-Thames' rich history and continued friendship and hospitality to Abingdon, Virginia. House patrons Johnson and O'Quinn, Senate patron Carrico, and acknowledged by the clerk of the House of Delegates.
Very good, sir. All right. Well, we're very pleased to bring that proclamation to you on behalf of the Virginia State Government. And I also understand we have an assorted range of gifts that our group has brought along, some of which may have arrived and some may be coming a little bit later. And would you care to touch on that, Mr. Kelly?
Mr. Mayor, you're breaking up a little bit. Not sure if it's on your end or not.
Again, as I understand it, there are several gifts that were brought along with you folks as part of this trip for presentation to the Abingdon-on-Thames Council, some of which may have made it and some may be arriving a little bit later.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, those items at the moment. And in particular, perhaps the most important one that is on the council's agenda today, but we can make reference in that it will be arriving below. I do have one item of gift that did arrive in addition to the resolution, so I would like for us to be able to present the resolution. And I would ask, with your permission and the council's permission, that Mr. Humphreys, council member here in Abingdon-on-Thames, present Mayor Lovett with the resolution. And then I would like to make a presentation by Mr. Nigel Warner at that time.
Okay. All right. Again, we have a resolution that is to, on behalf of the town of Abingdon, Virginia, acknowledging the events of the day. And I would propose that we read it on this side of the Atlantic and then allow Councilman Humphreys to make the presentation as you're suggesting. Would that be agreeable?
That's agreeable.
Okay, and I am going to ask Vice Mayor Lowe if she will read the resolution on our end and put it into the record, please.
Are you ready?
I believe we're ready.
Whereas the towns of Abingdon-on-the-Thames, Oxfordshire, United Kingdom, and Abingdon, Virginia, have maintained a friendly exchange of visitors since the early 1960s with the visit of past Mayor Constance Cox to Virginia. And whereas through the years the exchange of visitors, post correspondence, and phone calls have kept our towns linked, if only in name, and whereas the creation of the World Wide Web and the use of electronic mail and social media has greatly increased this communication, allowing inhabitants of either town to visit the other whenever they may wish. And whereas in 1995, by act of the Virginia General Assembly, Abingdon, Virginia became the only municipality in the Commonwealth allowed to create its own broadband internet services and one of the first in the Commonwealth to provide free town-wide wireless internet service. And whereas Always on the cutting edge of technology, Abingdon, Virginia is one of the few local governments in the Commonwealth of Virginia to provide electronic agendas only through the use of tablet and software technology, and whereas modern advancements have given us yet another medium to correspond with our civic partners, one which will allow us to meet both audibly and visually in a real-time experience, and whereas the town of Abingdon, Virginia is pleased to hold the first ever electronic meeting with Abingdon-on-the-Thames, Oxfordshire, on the occasion of their celebration of Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee, allowing those whom we share a civic friendship the opportunity to view and participate in a town council meeting 3,920 miles away and 5 hours behind. And whereas it is believed that this momentous occasion is the first electronic meeting between a local government in the Commonwealth of Virginia with a sister city, twin town, or such, and whereas the June 4th, 2012 regular meeting of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia was called to order in Abingdon, Virginia by Mayor Edward B. Morgan, and roll was called of the council members present and said meeting by town clerks Cecile M. Rosenbaum electronically from Abingdon-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, United Kingdom. Council members present at roll call were Edward B. Morgan, Mayor, Kathy C. Lowe, Vice Mayor, Jason Berry, Council Member, and Bob Howard, Council Member. Also present and participating in the meeting was Garrett Jackson, Assistant Town Manager. And whereas a delegation of council and staff from the town of Abingdon, Virginia, namely Richard E. Humphreys, Council Member, Gregory W. Kelly, Town Manager, Cecile M. Rosenbaum, Town Clerk, Deborah C. Eisenhower, Town Attorney, and Tennille B. Montgomery, Marketing and Social Media Coordinator, are appearing at the Abingdon, Virginia regular council session on June 4th, 2012 at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time via electronically from Abingdon-on-Thames, Oxfordshire. Whereas certain members of the council and staff
To be filled in later.
from Abingdon-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, United Kingdom are likewise appearing and participating in the said Abingdon, Virginia regular council meeting on June 4th, 2012 at 3 p.m. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Abingdon, Virginia Town Council does hereby formally recognize and preserve this historic occasion of the use of modern technology for allowing transatlantic participation in its June 4, 2012 regular council meeting. Be it further resolved that the clerk shall preserve this historic resolution in the official Town of Abingdon, Virginia records and further transmit an official copy to our sister town, Abingdon-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, United Kingdom.
Very good, and thank you. Council, what is your pleasure regarding this resolution?
I move that we adopt the resolution as read.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution as read. I would ask our clerk, Ms. Cecile Rosenbaum, to call the roll, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Mr. Howard,
Aye.
Mr. Berry,
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe,
Aye.
and Mayor Morgan.
Aye. And it is with pleasure that we enact this resolution, and we would ask Councilman Humphreys if he would make the presentation to Mayor Lovett.
And it is with great honor that we present Mayor Lovett with the proclamation approved by the Virginia Assembly of commemorating the Queen's Jubilee, Diamond Jubilee, and their wonderful hospitality and all the things that they have done for us since that we have been here. They've been marvelous, marvelous hosts and hostesses.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right. Thank you. And do you have a copy of the, Mr. Humphreys, do you have a copy of the resolution we just read? Okay, that will be transmitted a little bit later. But it is with pleasure that we make that presentation to you today. And Mr. Kelly, are you still there with us?
I am.
And I believe you indicated there was another gift you wish to provide at the present time.
I do, Mr. Mayor, and I believe Mayor Lovett would like to make a few comments first, if that is appropriate.
That's certainly appropriate.
Right. I'll just see as I'm seated. Right. Mayor Morgan, Councilman, Town Clerk, Town Attorney, thank you very much for this wonderful proclamation. I'm deeply honoured because it is such a privilege to receive this on behalf of the town of Abingdon-on-Thames, and I can tell you it will be in a prominent place in our council and chamber. I value the connection that we have with you, a town bearing our name. That's wonderful. And I thoroughly enjoyed this weekend meeting the lovely people from Abingdon, Virginia. And I hope that this will now strengthen the ties between us. It seems that we're both towns that are in historic towns that are in IET, up-to-date electronics, and it's wonderful that we've been able to make this connection today by Skype, which isn't always reliable, but fortunately it has been today. And our best wishes to you, and we hope that we'll have many years of friendship. And it's been wonderful to have guests from Abingdon, Virginia, to help us celebrate Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee, because I don't think it's going to happen again, that we have a monarch reigning for so long, for a long, long time. So thank you very much. You've honoured this town.
Thank you, and we appreciate you. We appreciate your kind comments, and we look forward to perhaps in the very near future, a formal twinning relationship with your town. And we also offer our regards to the Queen on the occasion of her Diamond Jubilee. It certainly is a momentous occasion, and we acknowledge the way that she has represented your country very well. And we wish her many good years of continued service to the United Kingdom and as a representative to the world. Thank you. And Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'd like to present it to my counterpart, who is the town clerk over here. I'm, of course, referred to as town manager, and he is clerk. And if I could, he's right behind me. I see him in the monitor here. So this is Nigel, and it's been a pleasure to meet tonight. So this time I have a presentation that I would like to give to Nigel, and before I do the presentation, excuse me, it looks like we're having a little monitor problem. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, before I make the presentation, I'd like to tell Nigel and the representatives from the council over here a little bit about the piece that I'm about to present him. It is made, and I'll hold it up for you all to see back home. It is a railroad spike that came from Cooper Trail Trestle number 7. Which was on a linear trail in Abingdon that was struck by a tornado last year. And it blew the largest trestle section that we had down, and we're in the process now of trying to have that rebuilt. We have an artisan of sorts on our town staff who works in our public works department named Thad Feeney, who actually makes knives from railroad spikes on the side. I specifically asked him if he could get access to one of railroad, one from trestle number 7 to be made, and Thad went to the stockpile where we currently have the material stored and obtained this particular spike and forged it into the beautiful knife that is on the presentation case. The presentation case, or stand rather, is made out of wormy chestnut that came from Abingdon as well and was made by Thad Feeney as well. I want to offer this to Nigel as a gift on behalf of me for his job duty, so to speak. It's mine, are symbolic, and sometimes having to cut through the political dictator. So I thought it would be appropriate, and I want to give full credit to Thad Feeney for his time, and mind you, it was not on town time that he did this, but he volunteered to do this, and it is a beautiful work of art, and I hope Nigel will accept it. So with that said, Nigel, thank you very much.
I'd just like to thank Mr. Kelly for this kind gift. It's been a great weekend here in Abingdon, and it's been wonderful welcoming our friends from Abingdon, Virginia. The friendship goes back many decades now, and we really look forward to developing this friendship over the coming years. You were saying that there's a lot of similarity between our jobs, and I think there's probably quite a lot we could learn from one another. So I really look forward to, hopefully one day soon, making a visit to see yourselves. But thank you very much for that, and best of luck with the rest of the council meeting.
All righty. Well, thank you, sir. All righty. And I would ask on our end, I'll have to confess that I don't know Mr. Finney, but is he with us today? He's not, but we are certainly very appreciative of the work in the craftsmanship that he has done to represent us, on this historic journey. And we certainly, I think, need to acknowledge what he has done as an excellent piece of craftsmanship and an excellent choice, I think. And Mr. Kelly, might the folks in England aware of how large the trestle was and what a piece of construction that actually was damaged by the tornado?
Mr. Mayor, it's my understanding that was indeed the largest trestle on the Creeper Trail, and I believe it was approximately 580 feet. Of course, you wrote a book about it.
Oh, yeah.
So perhaps, if I'm inaccurate, you will correct me.
I think you're close enough.
But it was indeed a beautiful trestle, and we will send some photographs over so that they can display those as well. But we're in the process of rebuilding the trestle. In fact, hope to actually get involved in that process within the next few months to try to get it built back. I will say that the Creeper Trail, on behalf of the town of Abingdon, generates much of the town's revenue in the sense of tourism from its the meals and lodging taxes that are derived from the individuals who come and utilize that trail. I believe some of the folks who were on the delegation before that came to Abingdon, Virginia from Abingdon on Thames actually got to go on the trail, and perhaps some of them were able to get out to that trestle. I'm not exactly sure. Allison Rook, the former mayor, of course, went out on the trail and to that trestle. And this is probably a good point for me also, Mr. Mayor, to point out that Ms. Allison Rook is here with us as well. And present, and we've all had the great honor of meeting her on both sides of the pond.
That we have. And is it possible for her to come to the camera?
Well, I'd like to introduce her because she wasn't in the room when I introduced the rest of our councillors. But it's Councillor Alison Rook, and she's the leader of our opposition party on the council.
Very good.
Hello there.
Hi.
Really good to speak with you.
It is a pleasure to see you again. I remember your visit to us in the past, and we had I believe, dinner one evening in the tavern. And it's good to see you again.
We did.
Yes.
Some very, very good service over here.
Well, it is a pleasure that you were able to join this meeting as well, and we will look forward to having you back to visit with us again.
Oh, we would just love to come back. It's like a second home.
Well, thank you, and we're very glad you could participate in this event today.
It's my pleasure, and very best wishes to everybody in Abingdon, Virginia.
Thank you. All right. All right. All right.
Mr. Mayor, and members of council, simply because of the relationship that he has had with a lot of the folks over here, I was wondering if perhaps you would allow Mr. Garrett Jackson, who is seated down at the far end, and don't get too comfortable down there, Garrett.
Should he come to
have a few words, please?
I'll have him come to my seat.
Don't get comfortable with that.
I think I like this seat better, Greg. Well, Mayor Lovett, Nigel, Alice, Allison, Sandy, those of you whom I know, I just want to say hello and thank you all for hosting our delegation over there. You've always been such gracious guests or hosts for me when I've been there, and have taken me in like the stepchild that I tend to be when I'm over there. And I appreciate all you do to make us feel comfortable. I wish I could have been there, but I'm glad you all have had a good delegation from Virginia to represent us, and I wish you all the best of luck. Alice, please tell your father I said hello. Nigel, please give Sandra my regards and hello, and everyone please take care.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see, Mr. Kelly, is there any other aspects or ceremonial aspects of our meeting that we need to handle today, or are we down to where we need to handle some business?
Yes, sir. I think that we have a pub ceremony waiting on us.
Well, very good, sir. I hope you folks have enjoyed your trip, and I would note for the record on both sides that everyone who made the journey to the United Kingdom did it on their own expense and not on the tab of the town of Abingdon, Virginia, or the town of Abingdon, England, to my knowledge. But we're very pleased that we have been able to have this delegation participate. And I would presume that our town clerk will be available, and you'll be available as we proceed with our meeting?
Mr. Mayor, I can be if you think that that's appropriate. There is a group tour that they are trying to get us hooked up to that we broke away from, but I'm happy to stay if you desire for me to be here.
I don't know that it's necessary. I think Our assistant town manager could probably handle this, and I believe Ms. Kingsley is here if we need some assistance on further on our end. But otherwise, we'll let you folks continue with the appropriate celebrations and representation of us in the town of Abingdon, United Kingdom. But I'm just very pleased that we could make this connection and be able to do this. It really is a historic moment.
Mr. Mayor,
It is indeed a very historic moment, and I wish that all of us could have been present on this side of the pond. It's been a memorable experience for me and all of the staff and the other residents from the town of Abingdon who got to come on the trip. Someone just tapped me on the shoulder, which is our town attorney, and indicated that she did need to make a comment before we left.
That would be fine, and I believe Mr. Berry and perhaps others may wish to make a comment as well, too. But we'll turn it over to Ms.
I hope those
Osborne.
comments aren't directly to me. No, I just wanted to apologize for the brevity of my bulletin report and to tell you that I think I must not have made the correct copy available to the ever-efficient Ms. Kingsley, but you will be receiving those.
That'll be fine. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Berry, would you want to come over here?
I can sit here, it's fine.
Okay.
I just want to say, Mayor Morgan and all those in Abingdon, Tim's, Delegate Joe Johnson, who was the chief patron of the resolution that was read and presented by Councilman Humphreys. I'm going to make you Delegate. Councilman Humphreys, he said it was a joy for him to sponsor that in the House of Delegates, and that Speaker Howe, who's the Speaker of the House of Delegates, had the pleasure of meeting Queen Elizabeth II when she came to Williamsburg about, I guess, 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago. And he said it was a pure, assured
The mic is breaking up.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It was an honor, the speaker said an honor to host Queen Elizabeth in Richmond and Williamsburg, and that the whole House of Delegates was excited about the resolution, and I just want to pass those comments on from Delegate Johnson.
Very good, and thank you, sir. Mr. Howard, any comments?
The only question I had was for Greg, how to get the knife on the plane.
Is this recorded?
Yeah, I hope so. So, did you hear the question? All righty.
No, we didn't hear that.
I believe you asked how we got the knife on the plane. Is that
Yes. So, how did you manage that?
Look at that smile.
Actually, the knife was shipped along with the resolution from the General Assembly. So those were the two things that arrived, and of course there are other things that will arrive later.
Well, very good, sir. Okay, and Mrs. Lowe, any comments?
Other than just to say hello to Allison and thank her for the tour of Abingdon, England when my husband and I were there, and to please give our regards to Mike and Maggie.
Miss Lowe, I might say that Mike and Maggie hosted a wonderful lunch for us yesterday, and they passed along their regards to you as well, you and Stephen as well.
Very good. And we certainly look forward to you folks coming safely back home, and we hope you've enjoyed yourselves, and we will look forward to hearing about your experiences when you get back with us.
We look forward to it. We have lots of photographs, and perhaps we can put a DVD together and circulate that to everyone once we get back.
Very good. Okay, thank you, and I believe we are ready to sign off on our end.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye, and thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lovett. I look forward to meeting you.
I hope so, but it'll have to be very soon.
All right, me too.
I'm only here for you.
Okay. All righty, thank you. All righty, are we ready to sign off?
Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, we're going to sign off on our end. Okay. Very good. Okay, and again, I offer my appreciation and congratulations to everybody who made this thing work. You know, it's really quite remarkable that it did come together, and that we have been able to actually have the meeting for this historic occasion. Okay, Council, we do actually have some real business to take care of today. First of all, we have 3 sets of minutes for our consideration. The work session meeting of May the 7th, 2012, the minutes of the May 7th, 2012 regular meeting, and then the special call meeting that was held on May 18th of 2012. What is your pleasure regarding these?
Mr. Mayor, I have one additional addition to the May 7th regular meeting where I was reporting some of the concerns from citizens as I hit close to 2,000 homes. Cecile got out, all the clerk covered all the topics, but the boundary adjustment was one I mentioned that many of our citizens were concerned about and its impact to our potential tax base. So I want to add that.
Okay, so you would request that we make that addition?
Modification, yes, sir.
Modification or addition to the minutes of the May 7th, 2012 regular meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any other additions or corrections to be noted?
Just that on page 8, item number 4, that Cooper Planning to include special occasion events in town-owned properties.
And again, you're referring to May 7th, 2012? Regular session?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other corrections or additions to be noted? Okay. Again, I'll entertain a motion regarding this.
I'll entertain a motion that these be approved with the modifications that were mentioned.
All right. We have a motion to approve them with the modifications that have been previously noted. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further comments? Hearing none, Mr. Jackson, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barry?
Here.
Mrs. Lowe? Is that an aye?
Aye, yeah.
All right.
Aye.
Too early.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Here. Well, no, I guess yes. Well, we're not used to this early in the morning, and you're not sure even what side of the Atlantic you're on sometimes. So my vote was a yes,
Okay,
please.
motion carries.
Okay. All righty. We have there are no employee acknowledgements or public hearings today. We do have a second reading of the ordinance, and in this case, we have an ordinance of the town, council of the town of Abingdon, Virginia, proposing a budget for the town and to make appropriation for the current expenses of the town and to fix a rate upon real and personal property, to fix other local tax rates and fees on utility services for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2012 and ending on June 30th, 2013. Mr. Jackson, I asked you to comment, and it's my understanding that we may need to make a modification in some previous actions.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public. Budget work sessions were held on April 11th, 2012 and April 18th, 2012 of this year in order to hear departmental budgets and non-departmental budgets. Public hearing was held on May 7th in accordance with Section 15.2-2506 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, requiring a first reading of such an ordinance. And a first reading of this ordinance was adopted at that time for a budget at that time of $15,066,347 as a total. At this time, due to some discrepancies in the Virginia retirement system as laid down by the Virginia General Assembly, we will have to amend that slightly. And I'll ask Mr. Mark Godby, the town treasurer, if he can come forward and help us explain that at this time. I will say that the property taxes remained unchanged at 28 cents to $1. Personal property at 55 cents to $1 to every $100 on both of those. Both remained unchanged. Let's see here. The 10 cents on pack of cigarettes, the cigarette tax remained unchanged, And residential commercial sewer rates and sewer tap fees will increase for county users of the town sewer system as set forth in the attached rate sheet to your budget ordinance. The meals and lodging tax of 7% also remain unchanged, as did the solid waste charges of $10 per household. Both remain unchanged. At this time, I would like to ask if Mr. Mark Godby would come forward and help us wind our way through this retirement system.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, there was a memo, I think, from myself to you folks included in the packet, and the Virginia retirement system mandated that beginning July the 1st, town employees would pay 5% of their own contribution. In the past, the towns paid both the employer and employee portions. We prepared the salary sheets back in March before the VRS mandate came down, and the full 14.31% was put in. And I accept responsibility for that oversight, that it was not pointed out to you in the last meeting that the money for the increase was already in the budget, and we would not need additional funds from reserves or from the town manager's discretionary fund. So the current rate for VRS for the employer is 9.31% and 5% for the employee, making the 14.31% that we will pay to the VRS system.
Well, if there has to be an error, that's certainly the way to make it.
Yes, sir.
That worked out well on our
The
behalf.
positive side is that we don't need the extra money from reserves.
Very good, sir.
And what we have done, just to wrap it up, is redone the salary sheets and moved the 5% from the VRS line over to the salary line of the employee, so that there will be a 5% increase, and that will be used for the VRS requirement.
Very good, sir. Does anyone on council have any questions of either Mr. Godby or Mr. Garrett about this?
No, I would just comment that, Mark, I think it was obvious, looking at the history of this thing, that the Virginia State Retirement system in Richmond, they knew this 14.3 was coming down. That's why they let people like you know ahead of time. And on the last day of the General Assembly, they passed this requirement to put the mandate on local governments in Virginia to add the 5%, along with a mandatory bump in pay to offset that 5%. And the reality is, when they do the math, all of our employees are actually going to be paying about 6.25% or 6.5%. So, due to Social Security taxes and those things. So, unfortunately, I said this before, the state just really set us up, all localities, to take this hit. So I don't think it's your fault, Mark. I think the reality is you did the right thing, and you were probably ahead of the curve. And the reality is we're just having to do damage control, if you will, because of action taken in Richmond, and no one asked our opinion on it. So I think that's a reality. So I wouldn't take the blame, is what I would say.
Well, and I know there was great confusion
Pass it
about
to the
how this
General
was going
Assembly.
to be managed and handled. Does anyone else have questions?
I don't have any questions. I'll just state for the record that when we were, I think the reason Mr. Godby might have said that is when we were in our work sessions, I asked if that VRS line item included it, and it was, Mr. Godby explained, an oversight because it was included. So I was in his office this morning talking to him about it, and we went over the budget. And what this in reality means for the employee is that the bonus money that we had allocated in a motion last month will actually now go back into the town manager's line item. So there will be $150,000 this year for employee bonuses if we rescind this motion, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the budget that is in this motion, the dollar amount, just for the record, was $15,171,125. After we rescind this, the budget will go down to $15,066.
347.
347.
Which was the original advertised budget.
Very good. Okay, any
We
further
come full
questions or
circle.
comments? Yes. All righty, Mr. Jackson, as I understand it, it would be appropriate at this time, as Mr. Howard made the original motion, to ask him to make a motion rescinding that original action. Would that be correct? Okay, Mr.
I will
Howard?
do that this time.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to rescind the original motion approved by the town council. Any, yes, ma'am?
I think I seconded it the last time. Do we have to rescind it in the same motion?
it doesn't
Okay.
matter.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second to rescind the original action taken by the council. Any comment or discussion about that? Mr. Jackson, if you call the roll, please.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, I will now entertain a motion for the amended budget amount for us to act on at the present time. And I would entertain a motion.
So I move that we adopt the original budget that was for $15,066,347, as presented by the town manager in the April budget work sessions.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second our motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve, essentially on the second reading, a budget for the next fiscal year for the town of Abingdon of $15,066,347. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Jackson, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye, thank you. We do have a bid that needs to be considered at the present time, and that is a bid for the train station building that is currently housing the Washington County Historical Society. Mr. Jackson, would you care to walk us through that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, you'll recall in April of this year, we had a bid, a recommendation from staff for Glade Construction. We had 3 bids, I believe, for that project, re-roofing the current Historical Society of Washington County location, which is a town-owned building. We had 3 bids for that. Glade Construction was the low bidder. Staff recommended that bid to council, and council awarded that bid. The Virginia Department of Transportation rescinded that bid. They disqualified it because the previous quote for the project was given by a contractor that was being used on that particular bid. So they did disqualify it. We rebid the project and took in bids at the end of May, a couple weeks into May actually. And at this time recommend Glade Construction, which was also the low bid on the last one, but they've not used the same contractor as before. So this should qualify them through the Virginia Department of Transportation. Once council approves or denies the bid, we will send that to VDOT, and VDOT will make a determination after that. We have the money through July 31st. If council makes action now and they qualify it, we would be able to start work. We're recommending after the Virginia Highlands Festival.
Okay, and again, the amount of the bid for the record?
Amount of the bid for the record of
$296,400.
can't find it on my.
It's $296,400.
And Mr. Jackson, if you could remind us, the VDOT grant was for how much? It wasn't this much.
No, the VDOT grant is for $220, $220,000, which that particular grant came about in 2002. The Historical Society applied for it, and they were running, kind of running that project management. And then at the death of their president in 2003, it fell to the town to work on. So we've been dealing with it since.
Okay, and we have budgeted for this amount?
Yes, at the April meeting, when you approved the last bid, you did make recommendation to pull funds to go ahead and qualify that bid.
Okay.
Yeah, because if we didn't, we would lose that grant, if I remember.
Okay. All right, council, what's your pleasure regarding this matter?
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we award the bid to Glade Construction for the amount of $296,400 for the roof restoration at Abingdon train station.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, very good. Again, we have a motion to approve awarding the contract to Blake, I believe it's Blake Construction for $296,400. And we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this matter?
You might just add, this is to bring it back to the original
Right.
roof with the skylights. And
It would be a slate roof as well as the original skylights that existed on that when it was built in 1912 and lasted up until, I think the town took possession of it in the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay, and that was when the roof was replaced?
That's when the roof was replaced with shingle and the skylights were removed.
Well, very good. And I know, again, this process has gone on for close to a
10
decade.
years, yes.
Of trying to negotiate this, but we're certainly appreciative of, the Virginia Department of Transportation for making these funds available and helping us to restore this historic building. Any further discussion? Mr. Jackson, if you call the roll, please.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay. And that brings us to reports from the town manager. Council has managed through unusual frugality to actually maintain some of our contingency funds for the balance of the year. I think there are several organizations that are perhaps in need of some assistance, and we do have a little bit of money available. I would provide an opportunity for several folks to come forward at the present time and discuss this. I'd ask that you be very brief. And that being said, I'm looking at Mr. Urey, and who is noted the epitome of brevity. If he'd like to come forward and talk briefly about a request that he has from the Veterans Memorial Park.
Mr. Mayor, while Mr. Urey's making his way up here, I will add that there is the fourth item which you
Yes.
have before you regarding the heat pump at the train station.
Yep.
We need to consider that as well at the end of these three.
Very good, sir.
I'll be as brief as possible for me. As you know, I think since 2003, the old park has been designated Veterans Memorial Park. And we have a long-range plan, which I think you're all acquainted with, which includes the construction of 5 picnic pavilions, honoring each of the 5 military services we have in the country. Those pavilions have presently been constructed but not quite finished. We have a shortfall of about $30,000 to complete them. We have put in money or request for money from next year's fiscal year's budget, but we need some money now. We rushed ahead in order to get these pavilions at least visibly ready for Memorial Day, which we did. And also we were told that the supplier or the Old Virginia Log Homes in Painted Gap, which have done an excellent job with the hewed logs, but they were coming on some economic hard times like much of the rest of the nation, and they might not have been in business had we waited, and so we could not have had matching logs as for that would match the first 2 pavilions that we had already constructed. So we have a shortfall right now and in dire need of $30,000 to pay for what we have and also finish the pavilions with the shakes, cedar shakes, and I think it's I think we can set a standard, and this park has set a standard of what other parks here in town as well as the countryside can be. And I'm reminded that one of the direct measures of the character of a community is the way it treats its veterans and its servicemen and women. And I might say that this town has done well in that measure, but we need your continued support. And I realize there are others also in need and well-deserving, but we'd appreciate if you could help us
All right.
the shortfall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, I've certainly had the privilege of going over and looking at the pavilions. They're great-looking facilities and a real addition to the town and to the park to have them there. And I certainly have to be complimentary about the level of outside financial support you've brought to this project. It's been very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe Ms. Davina Sexton is here from the Abingdon Senior Citizens.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this request. These funds, if approved, would be used for debt retirement. When my husband and I were in college, we went to school on grants, loans, scholarships. Always said the same thing, that bought our future, also mortgaged it. The same is true for the Abingdon Senior Center, where the Virginia Ballroom is concerned. Our board is committed to fiscal responsibility, to paying down that debt. As lean as times are, and they are extremely lean, we are doing that now. We have been doing it since the beginning of the year. With this request would enable us to move forward with that, to make more gains this year, would also reduce the amount of interest that we are paying. If you look at the demographics of our community in the town of Abingdon, more than 1 in 5 of us is 65 or older. That's from the 2010 census. That is larger than the state average. Part of that, of course, is because we have been so successful in selling ourselves as a great place to retire, which of course we are. So we'll continue to look at that. Also, as our baby boomers continue to age, those numbers are going nowhere but up. I tell you that to suggest that if the Senior Center did not exist, we would have to create it, but we do exist. We have been there for 40 years. I expect we will be there another 40. But whether or not we exist or we fully serve the needs of a growing senior population depends on all of us, and I ask your help. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, and I believe Ms. Michelle Holden is here from the Abingdon Redevelopment and Housing Authority. Mike Rush, or Mr. Rush, if you care to represent the group. Okay. And I believe Mr. Rush is the chairman of the board.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Holden is the director of the program. And understand that there is some need in your agency as well.
Yes. In our presentation, we addressed a couple of needs, and one of those needs was the continuing funding of a reserve that allows us to stay out of trouble with HUD and keeps the Abingdon Housing Redevelopment Authority solvent. So whatever consideration you're able to give to that request is as it was and remains as it was. So we'll just count on your best judgment and ability to support our request.
Very good. And I would have to comment that there was a time when there was no organization in town that I did not hear more complaint about than the Housing Authority and its management. And it has been such a pleasure to see the organization right itself. I get, wonderful compliments these days about the work that you're doing and the improvements in the neighborhood, and it's a real pleasure to see things turned around in the way that they have. And I'll offer on behalf of the council my compliments to the board of directors and also to your work, Michelle, in terms of how the program is managed and what's happening there at the present time.
Thank you.
All righty. Anybody have any questions of any of the folks that have spoken with us today? Okay.
And I'd just like to make sure that our request the other day to unrestrict those funds.
Yes. Mr. Kelly spoke with Mr. Tucker, the auditor,
Thank you.
and had that corrected.
Thank you. That correction was made.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Let's see, Mr. Jackson, how much money do we have to work with? I'm being handed a figure here. It
In the
appears.
contingency, I have $48,969.40, and in the mayor's line item, $907.75, for a total of $49,877.15.
All right, again, 49.
$877.15.
Okay, and again, there was an additional item, I think, concerning a heat pump problem that was occurring at the train depot.
Yes, now I will address that quickly, but Mrs. Lowe just brought something to my attention. We may be able to address this out of another item instead of contingency. The heat pump at the Historical Society is out. It is not cooling. They did procure 3 bids, which I gave you copies of. The lowest bid being $3,800 from Appalachian Heating and Cooling. According to the lease agreement the town has with the Historical Society, page 3 of the lease, under maintenance and repairs, the lessor shall be responsible. Let's see here. The cost of replacing the heating and cooling system for the premises, if required, which cost shall be shared equally by lessor and lessee. So we do share that cost with the Historical Society. That would be if we went with the low bid of $3,800, that would be half that cost.
We're apparently receiving emails as we go along here, and they're, just passing back and forth down the council.
Mine
this
sounds
is
off.
happening. So.
Do I need to repeat it?
No, sir.
Okay.
I think, in other words, it's estimated $3,800, and I believe we're supposed to divide the cost equally.
Yes, and in what Mrs. Lowe brought to my attention, we could actually use that out of the Board of Architectural Review's budget for this year. They have a significant amount over $1,200 or $1,400 that we would need.
All right.
So we could use that instead of going through this contingency. So if
That
that's
would be
okay, I
excellent.
can handle it out of that line item instead.
Okay, is there any action that would be required on our part for that? Or?
No, I think that would just fall under Mr. Kelly asking the Building Inspection Department to actually take care of that.
Very good.
Good
Okay.
idea.
So that leaves us basically with a total of $49,877.15 to work with. Again, we have, I had a small amount in my contingency fund along with the council's contingency, and I would welcome your thoughts, council, on how to manage this.
I spoke with the mayor before the council meeting about this, and if I can use some notes. I just have one question for the mayor. Would you like for your contingency to be considered in the council contingency, or would you like for the mayor's contingency to remain under your?
No, I think I would, at this point in time, the fiscal year is almost over, and I would propose that the balance I have left be placed along with the council's contingency and potentially allocated to the 3 organizations that have been here before us today.
Well, as we spoke, there's no easy way to allocate money that isn't as much as people ask for. So we felt like that the most fair way would be just to divide the remaining funds, which is $49,877.15, is to divide that equally 3 ways between the 3 organizations.
Now, that's one proposal. We're open to other ideas on the topic.
I got a question, Mr. Yeary. I think at the last meeting there was a possibility of some more contributions coming in from an outside source. Did that happen? Which could be applied towards this project?
So far, it has not happened. Still hope.
But I could only presume that if you got money from the town, that would help make the other one happen.
Yes, because we've gotten a lot of matches.
Yeah.
Match grants several times from 2 of the major coal companies and others. And so, we put probably $200,000 in the park in the last couple of years, most of which was local contributions.
Okay.
So it's a good investment for the town.
That it is. Okay. All right. Mr. Barron?
Well, I was just going to ask Mike Rush, what's the amount you need to get through this next fiscal year or the end of this fiscal year? Is there a number you have in mind? I I know you wanted, I think it was 150,000. I can't remember the number, what you asked for, but is there a number you need? And the same thing I would ask Ms. Sexton, is there a certain dollar amount you really need, I guess?
The approach the council proposes suits us just.
Okay.
I'm not sure that answered your question.
No, it didn't answer my question, but he's okay with what Ms. Lowe's proposed. I think, I'm a member, and so is Bob of the Veterans Board. I know from what my understanding is, the shortfall is close to 20,000, but future anticipated is 30, I think, so to finish it out, but the immediate need is 20, is that right?
At least 20.
So just for the information of the council, that 20 is their immediate need for the finish out of the parks, which is a town property. So, you know, I kind of think we need to look at that as their immediate need to finish out the shelters that are currently under construction.
And, you know, again, we're in the process of discussing this, you know, when there may be, I'm open to ideas on this. At the present time, if we divide basically the 49,000 three ways, I think that's about 19,000 apiece, something like that.
16.
16, I'm not.
16,625 each.
Okay. And so we're saying that the Veterans Group have an immediate need for 20,000, is that?
At least, sir, that's the current deals.
Okay. All right, again, council, I'd welcome my, Mrs. Lowe has presented, you know, an approach on this. You know, there is obviously other approaches. I'm welcoming motions, discussion.
Well, what's the, one question of, what's the debt of the senior center currently? Could you give us that number?
Construction debt is 185. I would make another comment, though, with regard to immediate need. As you're aware, we were part of the across-the-board cut for fiscal 13 through the town. I do not yet know what the funding will be for the county or United Way, although I am anticipating a reduction in United Way support, in large part because the national priorities that have been set by that organization primarily address the needs of youth, children, youth, young families, which does not include us. I learned this morning that there will be a reduction in funding from District 3, or that's very likely. There will be a public hearing Wednesday, but that was anticipated, and I believe that will happen. So I need every penny you can give us to fill those holes.
I will say that as the town's representative for District 3, that is true, that there will be a reduction.
And I can tell you that sitting on the senior board, their debt service is great on them right now, because in the past they have not, their past administration was not able to make any payments toward their debt reduction. So they've been carrying the same debt now for, I don't know, 3 to 5 years. Is that correct?
Yes. But as indicated, that has changed. The budget that was approved in March made a commitment not just to debt service, but also debt retirement. And we are current on that commitment and will continue to be.
And I've heard very good things about your management of the program. You know, apparently we had our concerns about how things have been going, but it, you know, has become clear to us that under your leadership, things seem to be moving in a very appropriate direction, and we're very pleased because it is an important program there. Okay, Council, let's figure this out. Perhaps you could offer that as a motion, and then we could debate it from there.
Okay, so we divided it, or Mr. Jackson just did the math 2 separate ways. If we divide it equally, if we divide the funds remaining equally. It is $16,625.71 per organization. If we give $20,000 to the Veterans Park, the other two organizations would get an added $14,938.
Are you, would you care to make a motion in regard to one of these proposals?
Let me ask Mr. Yeary one question. Mr. Howard said that you might be getting some donated funds, and there's not a huge difference in 16,625 and 20,000. So if we just divided this 3 ways, would that help alleviate your issue to the point of being able to seek contributions?
Well, you know, you kind of put in a position, one of the also direct measures of a character community is what you consider senior citizens.
Right. I know. And so that's why we're struggling.
And our impoverished folks that don't have good housing.
Yeah.
So you might have a dilemma, so I don't want to be selfish. I can say we've had one person indicate that he would try to help. That has not happened yet. You know, we will try to make do with whatever we can. We really need 30,000. Would another 4,000 make a difference? Just take what we can get.
Mr. Berry, Mr. Howard, you folks are on the Veterans Committee, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the matter.
I think the amount that's due is also for some other organizations too, not only the group that built the shelters, but there's some other
Companies.
vendors that we owe, correct?
Yes.
It's not only just the company.
I mean, the number is $20,000 from my understanding. That is in the rears, I guess is a word I can use.
Okay.
That's the real number. But I do agree with Mr. Urie's comments. We need to support all 3 organizations, and if you look at it from an equity or equitable point of view, splitting it 3 ways is fair across the board. My only other question to the Housing Authority is, do you still have a balance? I know about 2 years ago there was a balance of funds left. Has that now been depleted with the match dollars at the federal level?
Well, at this point, we don't have that match.
You don't have, okay.
And so what we're working through is a very multi-pronged approach at resolving this. One prong of which we have an $85,000 problem. Yeah.
Okay.
So
you need our money to get the match money. Is that right? Is that right? Okay.
All right, council, again, I would entertain a motion regarding this matter.
I'm going to ask again because Mr. Berry and Mr. Howard are on this Veterans Park administration or group, and so I'm perfectly willing to make a motion, but I really want a recommendation from them if you know that what their recommendation is as far as the Veterans Park is concerned.
Well, no, it's. I mean, I've talked to the treasurer for the organization, and it's. He's not here, but it is a $20,000 number. That's a real number. The anticipated long term to finish out the park is 30, as we have a memo from Mr. Urie. My only comment would be, obviously, it supports the veterans, supports this community, but it'd be whatever money we decide on is money back into a town asset that is Air Park.
Right.
So we'd be using the taxpayers' money to support your asset, your property. So, you know, it's not money that's wasted. It's enhancement of our property, the people's property. So I'm willing to support the 20,000. I'm also willing to support the third. I mean, I can go either way, but the true need is 20,000 in real bills. So from where I sit as a member of that board, it's no kidding you need $20,000.
Okay.
Now, if you do 625.71, we're going to have to knock on a lot more doors sooner than later to try to match that shortfall. So, you know, I'm just giving you the facts.
So would it be your thought or preference that we provide the 20,000 and perhaps divide the balance between the other two organizations?
I would if you want to put the money back into town property. But if you want to be fair, we'll split it three ways.
That's all right. That's okay. Thank you. Mr. Godby, in our council contingency coming up for the next fiscal year, or not our, but in council contingency coming up for the next fiscal year, there's a little, somewhere around, am I correct if I remember that there might be about a $80,000 or $100,000? And the reason I'm asking these questions is we can put the other organizations on the agenda after the July budget is approved. That's the reason I'm asking these questions.
Okay.
$124,000.
Okay. Okay, so the Veterans Administration, or the Veterans Park, sorry, not Veterans Administration, I move that we give the Veterans Park $20,000, and we give the Housing Authority $14,938 each from council contingency from the June 2012 budget to complete the council contingency for this year. I also move that we put the Senior Center, the Housing Authority, and the Veterans Park back on council agenda for our August meeting, after we see how the budget is starting to flow.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to divide the combined council and mayoral contingency balances to give the Veterans Memorial Park $20,000 in financial support, and the balance to be divided equally between the Abingdon Senior Center and the Abingdon Redevelopment and Housing Authority, and that this would come up again for further consideration of possible contingency funds from the next year's budget in our August meeting.
Correct.
I believe I've got that correct here. Any further comments?
Did you want to include in your motion, Kathy, that this is
the final
year? He actually asked for an advance out of the 2012-2013 budget.
No, well, this, so in my motion, yeah.
Come out of that, you think? Or you
No, I would like for the motion to reflect that it comes out of the council's 2011-2012 remaining contingency funds.
All right, and then we would entertain further possibilities from our next year's budget at our August meeting.
At our August meeting.
All right. Okay, any further discussion or comment? Hearing none, Mr. Jackson, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. All right, thank you, Council. We have now consideration of authorization to negotiate a contract with an engineering firm to prepare the plans for the replacement of trestle number 7 on the Virginia Creeper Trail. And Mr. Dew, you're very prompt right here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll be calling.
Mayor Morgan, members of council. This represents essentially step 3 on the process in the Virginia Procurement Act to obtain professional services. We did issue a request for proposal a couple months ago and received 4 proposals from engineering firms for this work. Excuse me. We formed a review committee that reviewed the proposals and scored them, and then set up interviews with the 4 engineering firms for this work. We're at the process now of the review committee did select one firm that they would like to recommend to council for the project. That is Tysinger Hampton & Partners of Johnson City, Tennessee. The next step, if you concur or give authorization, would be for the town manager to negotiate with Tysinger Hampton & Partners to come up with a contract for this project.
And I would note that that is the firm that I think we originally contracted with to develop design possibilities for addressing the problem.
That's correct. That was they did the concept study and came up with alternatives presented to you previously, and that was under a separate procurement of professional services then. This is the second stage of getting the trestle rebuilt.
And should we award this contract to them, would you outline the basic procedure of what would be required in terms of design, contracts, and so forth, and what kind of timetable we might be looking at for construction to get underway?
In all of our discussions and interviews, we were able to discuss with the firms a possible timeline, and every one of them discussed a timeline which would involve construction during this winter season, which would coincide with sort of the lower ridership or usership of the trail. So that's what we're looking at. The design would probably take 60 days after the firm is given the go-ahead to start work, and then we would have to bid the job out and get a contract with a contractor, a successful bidder, and then start construction then. But this recommendation is to allow the town manager to negotiate a contract, which fall along the Procurement Act.
And again, it's your recommendation that we authorize negotiation with Tysinger, Hampton, and Partners?
Correct.
Okay.
Were they the low bidder?
For professional services, you do not discuss fee, and that's what this step is, involving negotiating a contract. The way it works is, if we're unsuccessful in negotiating an acceptable contract with Tysinger, then we would go with the second firm that the review committee recommends.
I see. And my only question, and I asked this question because Mr. Bundy approached me about this project, and my question is, Bundy Architecture and Engineering are a group in Abingdon, Virginia, and so is there, I guess I'm asking what the difference is in Tysinger out of Johnson City and Bundy out of Abingdon.
Well, after both the review and scoring of the proposals and the interviews, the review committee felt that their team that they have, their design team, just has more qualifications for this kind of work, more work experience directly related to this kind of work. So, I think it was a fair assessment of the design teams. That's certainly not any kind of knock or criticism against Bundy or either of the other two firms that we interviewed. They were all quality firms, and we had, I think, very good interview sessions with each firm, and they each brought some impressive things to the table. But ultimately, the review committee felt like Tysinger Hampton Partners was the best firm for this project.
Okay.
And again, we were looking at specifically the construction of a wooden bridge type situation, and as I understand it, they had actually considerable experience with this actual type of design and construction.
They do. Even the principal or founder of the company has long-term experience with railroad, actually worked for a railroad in bridge design, and the team that they had also had similar experience. So really feel comfortable with the recommendation.
Okay. Any further questions or comments about this? Okay, Council, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the review committee that we let our town manager negotiate the contract with Tysinger, Hampton, and Partners for this Creeper Trail bridge design.
Very good, sir. All righty. Any further discussion, comment? A second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize our town manager to enter into negotiations with Tysinger, Hampton, and Partners to design for the design of a replacement for trestle number 7 on the Virginia Creeper Trail. No further comments. Mr. Jackson, if you call the roll, please.
Mr. Berry?
Yay. Aye. Gosh.
It's the English influence.
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you, sir. Okay, we have several resolutions for our consideration. First of all, we have consideration of a resolution of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia regarding Virginia Retirement System employer contribution rate. We have Ms. Deborah Atkins Vance, who is our Director of Human Services, and Mr. Godby is required to comment about this.
Good morning, Mayor Morgan and esteemed council members. We're asking that you consider passing the resolution for the new employer contribution rate that was set by VRS, which would be 9.31, and this would be in addition to the 5% coming out of the employees' pay, totaling 14.31, which is the rate that Mark luckily forecast in his budget.
Very good. And as I understand it, this resolution is required to be presented to the state to be consistent with their requirements.
Yes, it's a mandate, and we have to have it in to VRS by July the 10th.
Okay. All righty, thank you. Any questions of Ms. Atkins-Vance? Okay, and again, this resolution is mandated. It is consistent with what we've already budgeted. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay. And, all right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution that would mandate our contribution of, I believe it's 9.3%?
9.31.
31% for the Virginia retirement system. Any further discussion? Hearing none, if Mr. Jackson, if you call the roll, please.
Mr. Baird?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, and then we have an additional related motion that, if I can find it back here again, which is consideration of a resolution of the Council of the Town of Abingdon regarding Virginia Retirement System member contributions by salary reduction. And again, Ms. Vance.
This particular resolution is in regards to the actual percentage that the employee would be paying. We're recommending that we go ahead with the 5% instead of the 1% as previously discussed, simply because it would be easier from an administrative standpoint, and also we'd be consistent with what our counterparts are doing, to include Washington County. So that's the second resolution, is for the 5% to begin immediately on July 1st.
Okay. Again, we have a resolution for our consideration that would basically authorize the employee contribution of 5% to the Virginia retirement system beyond the additional 9.31% that we've further authorized. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we present or accept the resolution as presented.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to basically make the employee contribution towards the Virginia retirement system at 5%, which is the amount mandated. Any further discussion or comment? Hearing none, Mr. Jackson, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Baird?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye, and thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. And that brings us to consideration of a resolution of the Council of the Town of Abingdon authorizing the town manager to enter into a lease purchase agreement for a truck-mounted combination vacuum jetter sewer cleaning system. Mr. Jim Smith.
Mayor Morgan, members of Town Council. The Town Council at its regular meeting on April 2nd approved the bid proposal submitted by Atlantic Machinery for the purchase of a jetback truck. Included with the bid was a lease purchase financing option to pay for the truck. A requirement of the lease purchase agreement is that the Town Council adopt a resolution, which I believe you have before you, and to designate a person to execute and deliver the agreement. And I request that you consider doing this at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Smith? All right, we have for our consideration a resolution authorizing our town manager to execute the lease purchase agreement and escrow agreement with Leasing 2 Incorporated for the purchase of the vacuum truck before mentioned. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
In a second? Second. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to authorize our town manager to enter into the agreement before mentioned. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Jackson?
Mr. Baird?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Howard? Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay. And that brings us to, Okay. We have no unfinished business scheduled on our agenda today. That brings us to matters not on the agenda. And I believe Vice Mayor Lowe has a matter that we perhaps want to refer to maybe our August meeting.
Yes. As I said, I was in Mr. Godby's office this morning, and we discussed the mistake and the budget, and the opportunity doesn't come along very often. Since we're giving a bonus this year instead of a cost of living increase, I asked Mr. Godby his opinion, and if the council would consider the $150,000 that is in the budget to divide that equally between all 142 employees instead of doing it by salary percentage, to send the message to the employees that we value their work equally. I understand that the full council's not here, but Mr. Godby, would you like to speak to that at all, or do you want me to speak for you? Okay.
Right.
Mr. Godby said that he had experienced that this would be an opportunity. He agreed this would be an opportunity to send a message to all of our employees that we think that each job is equally as important, and he agreed that dividing the bonus money between them would be a gesture of goodwill toward from the council to the staff.
Okay, and unless I hear any objection, I would propose that we place this on the August agenda to perhaps when our full council and all staff are present to discuss how we might handle that aspect of employee compensation. And again, that would be on our
July agenda.
We want to have it on July or August?
Probably August.
Doesn't matter.
I think it'd probably make more sense to have it on the August agenda. But again, that will be scheduled for further discussion. Are there other matters that council wish to bring up at the present time?
I don't guess that I want to bring it up, but I know Ms. Sexton had called me over the weekend, and I didn't get a chance to return her call. She might want to speak to council. She had something she wanted to talk to council about.
Okay, yes, ma'am, you can come forward.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you again, second time. For the record, my name is Davina Sexton. I am the director of the Abingdon Senior Center and the Virginia Ballroom. The second request that I have for you today also relates to the Virginia Ballroom. I think, as all of you know, that beautiful addition to our building was constructed not just for the use of our programs, but even primarily as an earned income stream for us, or a potential one. We work extremely hard. What we can do is, however, at present, hampered somewhat. So I'm here on behalf of my organization and also my board, which voted unanimously at their May meeting that this request be made. We operate that ballroom, as I think you know, under the terms of a special use permit. We are zoned as a party house. We do have two restrictions, however, that we are asking most respectfully that you consider modifying. One of those restrictions precludes the sale of alcohol by the Abingdon Senior Center or the Virginia Ballroom. The second precludes the handling of alcohol by employees of the Abingdon Senior Center and the Virginia Ballroom. Alcohol is available at numerous events there, either our own or rentals, but is made possible by others. We are asking you to remove those restrictions in order to enable us to increase the earned income that we can realize through that facility. The difference would be that those alcohol revenues would be recovered by us rather than others. It would also make us more competitive as a venue for rent. Now, if people want to have a nice dinner there and a glass of wine, they have to apply for their own banquet license in order to do so. This would just enable us to provide that service to them. We certainly recognize that there will be a heightened level of responsibility associated with that. I assure you that we do recognize that and will meet that. I will not make the request otherwise. There is an old saying, every time you hear from me, I say these things to you, but it's just how I think. You can give a man a fish, or you can teach a man to fish. I know how to fish, but I am asking you to give me a little bit better fishing pole. I thank you for your consideration. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, I would make a brief comment that I believe there is a procedure that this would need to go before the Planning Commission before
Yes, we would need to
council would act on it.
to renew the special use permit.
Yeah, and I think I would ask Mr. Jackson to refer it to the Planning Commission, let you make a presentation to them, and they in turn would make a recommendation to us. But that is the process that we're going to need to go through in order to give it some consideration. And, you know, again, we understand things are coming around there. We're very glad to hear it. And, you know, again, they will report back to us, I'm sure, in the near future.
Well, and it would require a public hearing in this body.
Yeah, there's several steps that have to be followed in order to make that possible for you.
I do just have one question, though. I looked through the ordinances to see what R3 zoning, which that is R3 zoning, right?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
I looked through the ordinances to see what that zoning allows, and it does allow party house by right. So is that, I mean, is there a, can you remind me why we put that restriction on?
I would have to go back and...
I think there was controversy from some of the other folks in the area. You know, it was something that, it was a considerable change from their previous operations, and I believe that was what occurred. But, you know, this has been several years, and so I'm not immediately familiar with everything that happened. But I'm confident that it needs to really be reviewed by the Planning Commission and let them make a recommendation to us. But, you know, we're very mindful of your situation there.
Thank you very much, and we will certainly be glad to do that, and I will follow up with Mr. Jackson.
Very good, and he'll make the arrangements to have it on the agenda.
The meeting is the fourth Monday of June, but I need to get with you before then to go over the restrictions and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Is there any other business that council members wish to bring before us this evening or this morning? I'm not used to doing it this time of day either. Is there anyone present in the audience at this time who wishes to bring a matter before our consideration? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Newman.
I may get thrown out, but I don't understand you're going to give our employees 5% increase, but you're going to take it away to pay the Virginia retirement. So it's going to put them in a higher bracket. They're going to take more taxes out of their check. They're not going to get an increase at all this year. And we have employees who can hardly make it from payday to payday. So how are we actually helping our lower paid people who are out here working and trying to feed a family? How are we making it giving a, I mean, how do you go and say, you're going to get a 5% increase, but you're going to pay that 5% to Virginia retirement, and that's going to put you in a higher bracket. They're going to take more state tax.
I'll try my best to answer that, and Ms. Vance and Mr. Godby, if you would help me. The state mandated that everyone be given a pay raise to make up for the amount that would be taken out for VRS. That's where truly our hands are tied, or excuse me, council's hands are tied as far as VRS goes. It was a, you know, you must give these folks a pay raise to equal this amount that will be taken away. And in essence, it cancels each other out. It's yes, given a raise and put in a higher bracket, but then it's taken away by the VRS, and that was just mandated by the state.
And when we when we adopted the first budget instead of the second budget, there is that's what we were just talking about. There's $150,000 in bonus money that we put in a line item to give to the employees that will actually be their raise, if you will. But it won't show up in their wage line item. And so that's what we just put back on the agenda to discuss how that money would be distributed among the 142 full-time employees.
And Mrs. Lowe's recommendation of spreading across all employees will allow those at the lower pay scale will get a bigger bang by spreading it across all full-time employees versus just doing a 3%, that's the number. It was a 3% bonus. If you give it just across the board, those at the higher salary get a bigger bonus. Those at the lower end get less, obviously. So by dividing across, is it 124?
142.
I'm sorry, 142 full-time employees. Those at the lower levels get more bang off of 3%.
If council agrees to do that, and we didn't vote on it today because Mr. Humphreys is not here, but if council agrees to do that, it will give the lower wage earners a higher bonus than the 3% that they would have gotten if they'd gotten just a cost of living raise. So we're trying to make sure that everybody gets enough that it doesn't hurt them, and as a matter of fact, they might actually get a little more.
They'll end up with more.
What I'm saying is, I have some boys who work under me and Kevin, and it's not the council's fault, it's not the town's fault, but by the time they get through with taking child support out of their checks and their insurance out of their checks, they're not taking home anything. So if you go back and you say, okay, you've got to pay 5% of your Virginia retirement, they're going to be highly upset.
No, they're not. It's a pass-through. They're getting it in their wage item. They're getting a 5% increase from the council, from the town, and then it comes. They get the 5% increase, then it comes out of their check and goes to the Virginia retirement system,
which is their money.
Yeah, and that is a key point. It's one of those things that you may not have the money right now when you need it, but it's still your money. When it goes into the Virginia retirement system, it's not like they won't have the opportunity to draw on it at some point. But we are mindful of the cash flow issue that this makes for people. We have some folks that are fairly low wage. Council has in the past tried to increase the bottom or the starting scale, for our full-time workers, but there's still some folks that are having trouble making it from day to day. We're trying to be mindful of that with the proposals that we're getting here. But this whole business is something that was mandated by the state. It seemed to have originated from the governor's office. We don't think it makes a whole lot of sense, but the state is trying to shore up their own, financial issues, and it's reached all the way back here to the local communities to do it. But we are mindful that there are real problems that need to be addressed by our employees.
Well, I'm just thinking of the ones, who
We
are
understand.
really struggling right now.
We understand.
With their paychecks, if they have enough, if they feel like, well, they gave us 5, but they took away 5,
Well, and again, we want to
Mr.
make
Mayor.
it clear that this whole business is not something that was dreamed up by the council. We have a reality that is mandated by the state that we have to address, and we are trying to find ways to make it, to meet the state requirement and to have the least impact on, the employees as possible. And we are going to be trying to find ways to where it won't hurt people as we go through the process. Mr. Berry?
Mr. Mayor, a month ago we were discussing the options and all that. We talked to Mr. Kelly about having Ms. Vance do some possible HR type sessions for the employees. I would just ask Mr. Garrett Jackson to talk to HR and see if that's a possibility to inform our employees, because there's going to be a lot of them say, hey, you just gave me this but you took it away, because they're not following the political world of Richmond, and I don't blame them for doing so. But we probably do need to do some education to kind of let them know this is how it's happening, why it's happening, and those type of things.
We do have some sessions planned as soon
Okay.
as some of our members from England get back,
Okay.
we have plans to sit down with all the employees and go over it.
Yeah, I know we talked about it. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's very good. Thank you for bringing that up, because that really is important. Anybody else wishes to bring, Mr. Macbeth?
Yeah, Rich Macbeth, 1139 Panorama Drive in Abingdon, Virginia. I just noticed it's not on the agenda still for June 19th at 7 o'clock at the Coombs Center. Is that still on for the Exit 19 VDOT meeting?
Mr. Dew is nodding yes, that public hearing is still on for June the 19th.
Yes, it's still on. The public hearing for that study, it involves the Lee Highway, Hillman Highway corridor, the Exit 19 and Exit 22 area is still on.
Yeah, I was just wondering why it wasn't on the calendar events.
It was overlooked, and I'm sorry that it was not listed on the calendar of events. It was certainly on my note, to mention that. But thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, also, has it been resolved, did they buy that property or not, or is that still under contract, or the contract has not been settled yet on that property?
I'm not sure whether that's been closed or not. The last that I knew of, it has not been closed.
It's my understanding that VDOT apparently has some other alternative solutions that they plan to present at that June meeting as well.
Right, I just wonder if, because that was still unresolved from the last time we talked.
I don't know the answer to that, but we can find out.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. Anyone else present that this morning who wishes to, Ms. Kingsley?
Mayor Morgan, I believe June 9th, the indoor garage sale has been canceled, so
Okay.
not enough participation.
All right. Okay. Anyone else?
Mayor Morgan, if I may, I do have one item that Mr. Kelly asked that I bring up. We have two members of our audience that he asked that I introduce. Both are sitting over here to the viewer's left. In the turquoise blue top, Miss Rebecca Moody. She's been an intern with the planning department since January. She's a student at Emory and Henry in the planning department, or in the planning with, I guess, what am I looking for here? With environmental planning, yes.
All
right. She came to work as an intern in January, as I said, and was going to study the hydrofracking issue in regards to how it would affect the town with the county. That obviously didn't become an issue, but she will be remaining with us and working on a feasibility study as her independent study for mass transit system in Abingdon.
Oh.
She's a Kingsport native, so she began just the other day working on developing some notes on different mass transit systems with cities and towns our size. So Ms. Moody will be with the planning department. She'll also be helping the planning commission with the amendments to the comprehensive plan this year. And then on the second row behind Mr. Cowart in blue shirt, Mr. Jason Beasley. Jason is an intern with Mr. Kelly. He is an MPA student, Master's of Public Administration at Virginia Tech, also undergrad at High Point University in Political Science. He will be working on the comprehensive plan as well and some other public administration projects for the next 10 weeks.
Very good. Well, we're pleased to have both of you with us here, and thank you for your assistance, and we hope you'll find it a productive experience as well. Okay. All right. Council members, anything you wish to bring before our attention?
No, sir, except that our newest Economic Development Committee person is here. He was here last month, but just as I started to recognize him, he left. So I would like for Mr. John Lagarde to stand up and introduce himself to the council.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy. That's a surprise. Yes, I'm John Lagarde. I live here in Abingdon now. My wife and I just retired and moved back after being away for 40 years. So look forward to working with the town's pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you back and serving with us. Thank you. All righty. Mr. Howard?
No.
Mr. Berry? Okay, and I don't have anything else to add myself. We do have one appointment, which is an appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals, consideration of Mr. Scott Wilson, who is eligible for reappointment to that body. Council, well, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I move we reappoint Scott Wilson to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to reappoint Mr. Scott Wilson to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Jackson?
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mrs. Logue?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, thank you, and we do have several announcements I've been asked to make. I believe our Parks and Recreation Department has the second, on June, well, that's come and gone. Well, I hope it went well. Okay.
I would like to know who the Iron Nut is.
Who was the Iron Nut, by the way?
We had a couple of individuals that completed the course that we had laid out in record time based on the original track last year, so it went very well.
All right. Well, I'm pleased to hear that, and we'll look forward to it continuing it as an annual event. I would note on June the 7th, we have a media event for the Love artwork that will happen at 4 o'clock at the Fields Penthouse. Also, on June the 13th, the Business of Tourism workshop that will be held at the Higher Education Center from 8:30 a.m. until noon. On the 16th, the Southwest Virginia Wine Festival, I guess it would be the first Southwest Virginia Wine Festival, will be held at Heartwood, and that runs from 1 to 5 p.m. On the 16th, the Art Ball Starry Nights celebrating Jessie McClanahan and acknowledging her service to the community. The William King will be located at the William King Museum. Is sponsoring it, but the event will be at the Martha Washington. And then, as previously noted, on the 19th, there is a VDOT public hearing regarding improvements to exit 19. On the 20th, the Highlands Festival preview at the Farmers Market. The 23rd, the Blues Festival gets underway at Latcher Field from 6 to 10 p.m. That is a free event. And on July 2nd, we will at 7:30 a.m., we will have the Town Council organizational meeting. We don't often meet at 7:30 a.m., but we are required to do that before the town begins its business day. And that being said, is there any further business for our consideration?
None.
I want to thank everyone for being with us today. It's been a remarkable day in the history of both Abingdon, Virginia, and Abingdon on the Thames in Oxfordshire, England. I'm glad everybody could be here today, and we thank you for your assistance and patience with us. Yeah, we are adjourned.